In the vast expanse of the galaxy, where civilizations rise and fall like waves against cosmic shores, humanity was once considered the most peaceful species ever encountered. The Galactic Council's files labeled them Category 0 threat, being so gentle they wouldn't harm a parasite feeding on their own blood. But files can lie, peace can be a choice. And sometimes, when pushed too far, even the most innocent lamb reveals the wolf that was always lurking beneath. This is the story of how the galaxy learned that human patience has limits, and what happens when those limits are finally crossed by those who mistake kindness for weakness. They thought they knew humans. They were catastrophically wrong. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood before the towering crystalline structure that housed the Galactic Council. Her modest delegation of 3 humans dwarfed by the massive alien representatives surrounding them. The air hummed with translation devices as dozens of species prepared to witness what many considered a formality: the official integration of humanity into galactic civilization. The species designation Terra Prime Human has undergone extensive evaluation, announced Councillor Vexthera, her 6 arms gracefully manipulating holographic displays. The insectoid being's compound eyes reflected the data streams as they cascaded through the chamber. Our findings are unprecedented. Sarah maintained her diplomatic smile, though she noticed the subtle tension in her companions. Marcus Webb, the xenobiologist, shifted slightly in his seat, while Captain Elena Rodriguez remained perfectly still, her military training evident in her posture. The third member of their delegation, trade specialist Kumar Singh, took notes on his tablet with practiced efficiency. In our 12,000 years of galactic governance, Vexthara continued, we have never encountered a species with such remarkably low aggression indices. The humans demonstrate conflict resolution through discourse, exhibit protective instincts only toward their young, and show no territorial expansion beyond necessity. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The hulking Craxi delegate, General Throm, leaned forward with obvious skepticism. His species had built their civilization on conquest, and the concept of a peaceful advanced species seemed to offend his very nature. Counselor, surely there must be some error in the assessment. No species reaches spacefaring capability without significant martial prowess. The data is conclusive, replied Councillor Zephyros, a tall, ethereal being whose translucent skin showed flowing energy patterns. Human history shows conflicts, yes, but their recent centuries demonstrate remarkable evolution toward cooperation. Their current global government maintains peace through democratic consensus. Their space exploration focuses on scientific advancement rather than military expansion. Sarah felt a mixture of pride and unease. The assessment was accurate for the humanity that had achieved global unity 50 years ago, but she knew their history contained darker chapters. The Council seemed to have overlooked or dismissed humanity's capacity for violence as an evolutionary phase they had overcome. We have observed human colonies for the past decade, added Councillor Meldorian, whose aquatic species communicated through bioluminescent patterns as well as translated speech. Their interactions with indigenous life forms show unprecedented respect. They establish minimal-impact settlements and actively protect local ecosystems. This level of environmental consciousness is rare among technological species. Captain Rodriguez caught Sarah's eye with a nearly imperceptible glance. Both women remembered the classified reports of the Kepler 442b incident, where human colonists had abandoned a potentially valuable mining operation to preserve the habitat of a newly discovered sentient plant species. The Council apparently interpreted such decisions as weakness rather than ethical strength. Furthermore, Vexthara's voice carried across the chamber. Human responses to aggression consistently favor de-escalation. In every documented encounter with hostile entities, including several tests we conducted without their knowledge, humans attempted communication and peaceful resolution before any defensive action. Dr. Webb finally spoke, his voice carefully modulated. Honored counselors, we appreciate your thorough evaluation. However, we should note that humanity's peaceful nature stems from choice and wisdom, not inability to defend ourselves when necessary. General Throm's mandibles clicked in what Sarah recognized as amusement. Doctor, your species' military capabilities are quaint. Your largest vessels barely qualify as patrol craft by galactic standards. Your weapons technology remains chemical-based and kinetic. Most species develop energy weapons before achieving interstellar travel. We focused our technological development on exploration and life improvement rather than warfare, Kumar Singh interjected diplomatically. Our resources went toward medical advancement, environmental restoration, and peaceful space exploration, Precisely why your species presents such an interesting case study, HFY said, his energy patterns pulsing more rapidly. You represent what many philosophers theorized but none thought possible. A species that conquered its aggressive instincts through wisdom rather than exhaustion. The session continued for hours as various council members questioned the human delegation. The queries ranged from social structure to reproductive habits, from technological capabilities to philosophical frameworks. Throughout it all, Sarah noticed a pattern. The council viewed humanity through the lens of their own experiences with warfare and conquest. To them, peace was either a temporary state between conflicts or a sign of fundamental weakness. We have reached our preliminary decision, Vextara announced as the formal session neared its end. Humanity will be granted Category 5 membership in the galactic community, full integration with all rights and protections afforded to peaceful species. Sarah should have felt triumphant, but something in the councillor's tone troubled her. Category 5? She asked. Protected status, explained Meldorian, her patterns shifting to what seemed like sympathy. Your species will be safeguarded against more aggressive civilizations. You'll have access to galactic trade networks, scientific exchanges, and cultural programs. However, certain sectors of space will remain restricted for your own safety. Captain Rodriguez leaned forward. What kind of restrictions? The Outer Rim territories, General Thrum replied, his voice carrying satisfaction. Regions where less civilized species operate. Pirates, slavers, territorial claimants. Your peaceful nature would make you ideal victims. Better to keep you in the safer inner systems where the Council maintains stronger patrol presence. The revelation hit Sarah like cold water. Humanity wasn't being welcomed as equals. They were being classified as a species requiring protection. The Council saw them as advanced children who needed supervision in a dangerous galaxy. We appreciate the Council's concern for our welfare, Sarah said carefully, but we would prefer to make our own decisions about where our people travel and settle. I'm afraid that's not possible, Vextara responded with finality. The galaxy contains numerous species far more aggressive than your own. The Skarn Confederacy alone has destroyed 17 peaceful civilizations in the past century. The Void Hunters enslave entire populations. Your species lacks the martial capability to defend against such threats. Doctor. Webb cleared his throat. Counselors, while we value peace, humanity has faced and overcome significant challenges throughout our evolution. We're not as helpless as you might believe. Doctor. Zephyros's patterns flickered with what might have been condescension. Your entire planetary military could not withstand a single Craxi battle group. Your colony ships are minimally armed transport vessels. Your people respond to aggression with attempts at negotiation. These are admirable qualities that must be preserved, but they require protection. The session concluded with humanity officially welcomed into galactic civilization under protective custody. As the three humans made their way back to their modest quarters aboard their transport vessel, the reality of their situation settled heavily upon them. They've essentially made us pets, Captain Rodriguez said once they were safely in their secured meeting room. Advanced, interesting pets that need to be kept safe from the dangerous animals. Sarah nodded grimly. The assessment was thorough, but they completely missed the context behind our peaceful choices. They see restraint as inability, wisdom as weakness. And they've isolated us from 3/4 of the galaxy, Kumar added, reviewing his notes. All the resource-rich outer systems, the expansion territories, the trade routes that don't pass through Council checkpoints, off-limits. Dr. Webb pulled up a holographic display of the galaxy with their designated safe zones highlighted in blue. The restricted areas glowed red, encompassing vast regions of space.
We're being confined to the galactic equivalent of a nature preserve. The question is, Sarah mused, what do we do about it?
Accept their protection and live as supervised children? Or find a way to prove that humanity can handle itself in the wider galaxy? Captain Rodriguez's expression hardened. There's a third option they haven't considered. What happens when their protected species encounters a threat they can't handle? What happens when the Council's patrols aren't enough? You're thinking about the Outer Rim reports, Doctor, Webb said quietly. The increased radar activity near the buffer zones? Sarah had read those same intelligence briefs. Pirate fleets were growing bolder, testing Council response times and defenses. Several protected species had suffered raids despite their supposed safety guarantees. The Council's military was spread thin across thousands of systems, and their response doctrine prioritized major population centers over scattered colonies. The Council assumes humanity will remain grateful for their protection. Captain Rodriguez continued. They assume we'll accept limitations on our expansion and development. They've never considered what happens when protection fails and the protected species has to save itself. Kumar looked up from his analysis. The restricted zones contain some of the most resource-rich systems in the galaxy. Rare metals, energy sources, habitable worlds. If humanity is confined to the inner systems permanently, our growth potential is severely limited. More than that, Dr. Webb added, we're being denied contact with dozens of species in those regions. Our scientific advancement, our understanding of galactic biodiversity, our potential cultural exchanges, all restricted because the Council believes we need protection. Sarah stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars. Somewhere in those distant lights lay worlds her people might never see, species they might never meet, challenges they might never face. The galaxy had judged humanity and found them innocent, too innocent to be trusted with their own choices. They're going to learn something about humanity that their assessments missed, she said finally. Peace isn't the same as pacifism. Choosing not to fight isn't the same as inability to fight. And protection that becomes imprisonment isn't protection at all. The three humans continued their discussion long into the ship's night cycle, unaware that their conversation was laying the groundwork for events that would reshape galactic civilization's understanding of humanity. In the Outer Rim territories they were forbidden to visit, dark forces were gathering. Soon, the galaxy would discover that sometimes the most dangerous opponents are those who fight not because they enjoy it, but because they have no other choice. Meanwhile, in a classified council facility, technicians analyzed the data streams from humanity's home system. What they found in the archived military records, the historical databases, and the testimonies of humanity's own veterans would have changed everything. If anyone had bothered to look beyond the surface assessments of a species that had chosen peace over war. But those files remained buried, marked as historical curiosity rather than current threat assessment. The Council's mistake was complete. They had evaluated humanity's present without understanding its past, measured its restraint without recognizing its capability. In the months that followed, human colonies in the safe zones prospered under Council protection. Trade flowed, scientific exchanges continued, and cultural programs flourished. Humanity seemed content with their designated role as the galaxy's most peaceful species. But in the classified channels of human military intelligence, veterans who had never spoken publicly about their experiences began to take notice of patrol gaps in the Outer Rim. Former soldiers who had spent decades in peaceful retirement started asking questions about raid patterns and Council response protocols. Engineers who had designed mining equipment began calculating the defensive modifications needed for frontier operations. Humanity's innocence, the Council would eventually learn, was not naivety. It was a choice that could be reconsidered if circumstances demanded it. The galaxy had judged them innocent and found them wanting in martial capability. They were about to discover just how catastrophically wrong that judgment had been. The emergency broadcast reached the human colony of New Geneva at 0347 local time, piercing through the peaceful morning routine with the harsh reality that the galaxy's safe zones weren't as safe as promised. Colony Administrator Janet Morrison stood in her office, watching the holographic display that showed the smoldering ruins of the Alteran settlement on Kepler. 438C, a world that had been under full Council protection just 18 hours earlier. 43,000 civilians, reported Captain Chen Wei, the colony's security chief, his voice tight with controlled anger. The scan hit them during shift change when most people were moving between residential and industrial sectors. Council response time was 47 minutes.
Morrison felt her stomach clench.
47 minutes was actually considered good response time by galactic standards, but for a civilian population under concentrated fire from Scar and battle cruisers, it might as well have been 47 hours. Survivors, 3,000. Mostly those who made it to the underground shelters. Chen's jaw worked as he processed the numbers. The Alterans followed Council protocols perfectly. No resistance, no aggressive action, full cooperation with evacuation procedures. The scan killed them anyway. The tragedy of Kepler, 438C, sent shockwaves through human space. For 6 months since their integration into galactic civilization, humanity had accepted Council protection with grace and gratitude. Human colonies had thrived in the designated safe zones, their populations growing, their technology advancing through peaceful exchange with other species. The arrangement seemed to validate the Council's assessment. Humanity was indeed too peaceful for the dangerous galaxy beyond their protected borders. But the Altarian massacre changed everything. It demonstrated that, even within Council-protected space, humanity remained vulnerable to species that viewed their peaceful nature as weakness rather than wisdom. The attack had been brutal, systematic, designed not just to steal resources but to terrorize other peaceful civilizations into submission. Dr. Rebecca Hassan, New Geneva's chief medical officer, emerged from her office with dark circles under her eyes. She had spent the past 36 hours treating refugees brought in by Council rescue ships, and what she had seen haunted her dreams. The Scarran didn't just attack randomly, she said quietly. They targeted schools, hospitals, residential areas first. They wanted to maximize civilian casualties before hitting industrial targets. It's a terror tactic, acknowledged Morrison. Make the cost of resistance so high that other colonies surrender without fighting. But the Altarians didn't resist, Chen pointed out bitterly. They followed every council protocol, did exactly what they were supposed to do, and they still got slaughtered. The conversation was interrupted by an incoming transmission marked with council diplomatic codes. Morrison accepted the call, and Councillor Vexthara's holographic image materialized in the room, her compound eyes reflecting what might have been regret. Administrator Morrison, I offer the Council's deepest condolences for the tragedy at Kepler. 438C. We understand this incident may cause concern among human colonies. Concern? Chen stepped forward before Morrison could respond. Councillor, 43,000 innocent people are dead because your protection failed them. This isn't concern. This is a fundamental failure of the security guarantees that convinced us to accept protected status. Vexthara's mandibles clicked in apparent irritation. Captain Chen, the galaxy contains inherent dangers that no military force can completely eliminate. The Council maintains the largest peacekeeping fleet in galactic history, but we cannot be everywhere at once. The Scarran raid was an unfortunate but isolated incident. Isolated? Dr. Hassan retrieved a datapad and began reading. 7 protected worlds attacked in the past 3 months. 12,000 casualties total. Response times averaging 45 minutes for frontier colonies, 28 for core worlds. The raids are increasing in frequency and intensity. The Outer Rim has always been more dangerous, Vexthara replied, her tone becoming defensive. This is precisely why your species was restricted from those regions. The core worlds remain secure. Morrison felt her diplomatic training warring with her growing anger. Councillor, Kepler 438C was supposed to be a core world. It was listed as Category 1 protection status in our settlement agreements. The classifications are fluid, based on current threat assessments and patrol coverage. The important thing is that the Council responded appropriately and will increase patrol frequency in that sector.
After the transmission ended, the 3 humans sat in silence for several minutes.
Finally, Chen spoke the words that everyone was thinking. They're using us as bait. What do you mean? Morrison asked, though she suspected she already knew. Think about it. Human colonies are peaceful, productive, and generate significant economic activity. But they're also perfect targets for raiders looking for easy prey. The Council establishes human settlements in questionable areas, provides minimal protection, and when raiders attack, they use it as justification for military action against pirate fleets. Dr. Hassan nodded grimly. The political calculus makes sense. Human casualties generate sympathy from other peaceful species and support for Council military expansion. The raiders reveal themselves attacking human colonies, making them easier to track and eliminate. We're the canaries in the coal mine. Morrison stared out the window at New Geneva's peaceful streets, watching human families going about their daily lives in blissful ignorance of the forces moving around them. Children played in parks while their parents worked in research facilities and cultural centers. The colony embodied everything the Council claimed to value: peace, cooperation, scientific advancement. But beneath that peaceful surface, something was changing. Morrison had been receiving reports from other human colonies, unofficial communications that painted a disturbing picture. Human settlements were being established in increasingly remote locations. Council protection fleets were being reassigned to higher priority sectors. Response times were gradually increasing while raid activity grew more frequent. There's something else, Chen said, pulling up a classified file on his secure terminal. I've been in contact with security chiefs from other human colonies. We're seeing patterns that the Council either doesn't recognize or is choosing to ignore. The data showed raid patterns across human space, attack vectors, response times, and casualty figures. When plotted chronologically, the information revealed a chilling progression. Raids were becoming more sophisticated, targeting specific infrastructure elements with precision that suggested inside knowledge of human colonial operations. Someone's giving the raiders intelligence on our settlements, Dr. Hassan breathed. Information about shift schedules, defensive capabilities, evacuation routes. It gets worse, Chen continued.
3 of the colonies that were hit had requested permission to upgrade their defensive capabilities. The Council denied all 3 requests, citing the incompatibility of weapon systems with their peaceful status designation.
Morrison felt pieces clicking into place. They want us defenseless. Not just for our own protection, but to ensure we remain ideal targets for anyone wanting to provoke Council response. Her secure communication system chimed with an incoming message from an unexpected source. The transmission originated from the Outer Rim territories, the very regions where humanity was forbidden to travel. The message was brief, unsigned, but its implications were staggering. To human colonial leadership, we have information regarding Council protection protocols and their effectiveness in deterring Rim Raider activity.
Recent intelligence suggests systematic exploitation of peaceful species for strategic purposes. If you wish to protect your people, you may need to consider alternatives to Council dependency.
Contact frequency 7.834, 991 if interested in mutual security cooperation. Chen read the message twice before looking up. Someone in the Outer Rim is offering to help us defend ourselves. The question is, who and why? And whether we can trust them more than we trust the Council, Morrison added. Hassan stood and began pacing. The bigger question is whether we can afford not to consider alternatives. The Council's protection is failing, and their restrictions are keeping us from protecting ourselves. That evening, Morrison called an emergency meeting of the Colonial Council. The 12-member body represented every major sector of New Geneva's population, from agriculture to research to manufacturing. As she presented the data Chen had compiled, she watched their faces change from confusion to concern to anger. We are livestock, said Dr. James Rodriguez, head of the Colonial Research Institute. Valuable, productive livestock that the Council keeps safe just long enough to be useful as bait or sacrifice. That's a harsh assessment, replied Minister Sarah Kim from the Cultural Affairs Department. The Council has provided us with unprecedented access to galactic civilization. Our scientific advancement in the past 6 months has exceeded the previous 50 years. At what cost? Demanded Colonel Marcus Torres, the retired military officer who oversaw colonial infrastructure. Sarah, they've systematically disarmed us, isolated us, and now they're using us as targets to justify their military policies. How much scientific advancement is worth 43,000 lives? The debate continued for hours, but gradually consensus emerged around an uncomfortable truth. Humanity's protected status had become a prison, and that prison was becoming increasingly dangerous. The Council's benevolent paternalism had evolved into exploitation disguised as protection. We need options, Morrison concluded, real options for defending our people when Council protection proves inadequate. Which brings us back to that mysterious message, Chen pointed out. Someone in the Outer Rim is offering alternatives to Council dependency.
Colonel Torres leaned forward.
Before we contact unknown entities in lawless space, we should consider what resources we already have. Earth's colonial charter requires every settlement to include personnel with military or security experience. We've been encouraged to treat that as a formality, that those people are still here. Doctor, Hassan nodded. I've noticed that some of the refugees from Kepler 438C have been asking questions, specifically asking if any of our colonists have combat experience. How many? Morrison asked. Torres consulted his datapad. 14% of our adult population has some form of military background. Most are veterans who emigrated specifically for the peaceful lifestyle the colonies offered. They've been content to put their warrior days behind them. But if circumstances change? Chen prompted. Then we have nearly 3,000 people who know how to fight, organize defenses, and train others. Torres's expression was grim. The question is whether they're willing to abandon the peace they came here to find. Morrison made her decision. Set up a discreet meeting. Not a formal military activation, just an informal discussion of current security challenges. Let them know about the patterns we're seeing, the protection gaps, the increasing threats. And if they volunteer to help? Dr. Hassan asked. Then we evaluate whether the Council's designation of humanity as a peaceful species was accurate, Morrison replied, or whether it was based on incomplete information about what humans do when their backs are against the wall. 2 days later, 47 humans gathered in New Geneva's community center for what was officially listed as a colonial security awareness briefing. The attendees included former soldiers, police officers, security specialists, intelligence analysts, and even a few former special operations personnel who had sought quiet retirement on the frontier. Morrison watched their faces as Chen presented the data about raid patterns, response times, and casualty figures. These were people who understood violence in ways the Council's assessments had completely overlooked. They recognized patterns of organized aggression, tactical planning, and strategic intimidation that the Council treated as random criminal activity. Questions? Chen asked after finishing his presentation. Master Sergeant Catherine Walsh, a 30-year veteran of Earth's Marine Corps, raised her hand. Captain, what's the Council's rules of engagement for protected species during raids? Full cooperation with evacuation procedures, no resistance that might escalate violence, complete compliance with raider demands until Council forces arrive. And how's that working out? The question came from Lieutenant Colonel David Kim, who had commanded planetary defense forces during humanity's last major conflicts. 43,000 dead Alterarians provide the answer to that, Chen replied quietly. Former CIA analyst Jennifer Martinez spoke from the back of the room. The raid patterns suggest coordination between multiple pirate groups. This isn't opportunistic crime, it's organized warfare using hit-and-run tactics against defenseless targets. Which raises the question, added Chief Petty Officer Robert Santos, of whether we intend to remain defenseless. The room fell silent as the implications settled. These were people who had spent their lives protecting others, who had served in conflicts the galaxy knew nothing about, who had chosen peace not from weakness but from strength. The Council had evaluated humanity's current pacifist culture without understanding the foundation of experience and capability that made that choice possible. Morrison stood to address the group. I want to be clear about something. The Council has classified humanity as a protected species based on their assessment of our peaceful nature. Any action we take to defend ourselves beyond their approved parameters could be interpreted as a violation of our protected status, meaning we could lose Council protection entirely, Colonel Torres added. Meaning, said Sergeant Walsh with a bitter smile, we could lose protection that's already failing to protect us. Commander Sarah Chin, a former naval intelligence officer, raised her hand. Administrator, what's the worst-case scenario? Council protection continues to degrade. Raids increase in frequency and intensity. Human colonies become prime targets throughout the galaxy. That's the trajectory we're on, Morrison confirmed. And the best-case scenario if we take defensive action? Unknown. We could deter future attacks, but we risk Council intervention and possible expulsion from protected space. Commander Chen nodded slowly. So, our choice is between certain continued victimization or uncertain consequences for self-defense. That's one way to put it, Morrison acknowledged. The meeting concluded with no formal decisions, but the mood in the room had shifted. These veterans had spent decades building peaceful lives on the frontier, but they recognized the reality of their situation. Peace was only possible when all parties chose to maintain it. When faced with enemies who viewed peace as weakness, the choice became fight or die. Over the following days, small groups of veterans began meeting informally. They discussed theoretical defensive scenarios, evaluated colonial infrastructure for military potential, and quietly assessed the combat readiness of New Geneva's population. No weapons were distributed, no formal military structure was established, but something was stirring beneath the surface of humanity's peaceful colonies. The galaxy had judged humanity innocent and harmless, suitable for protection but incapable of self-defense. The Council had built their assessments on current observations while ignoring historical capabilities. They had mistaken choice for inability, wisdom for weakness. But scattered across human space, in colonies throughout the supposedly safe zones, men and women who had once been warriors were beginning to remember skills they had hoped never to use again. The galaxy was about to receive an education in the difference between a species that couldn't fight and a species that had simply chosen not to. And in the Outer Rim territories, someone was watching humanity's growing frustration with Council protection, waiting for the right moment to make contact with a species that might be far more dangerous than anyone imagined. The secure transmission from frequency 783-4991 arrived 3 weeks after the Kepler 438C massacre, carried by a heavily encrypted data packet that somehow bypassed Council monitoring systems entirely. Administrator Morrison stared at the decoded message, her hands trembling slightly as she absorbed its implications. Administrator Morrison of New Geneva Colony, this communication originates from Captain Elena Vasquez aboard the independent vessel Forgotten Dream. I am human, formerly of the Earth Colonial Marine Corps, 2nd Battalion, 3rd Company. Service record: Operation Crimson Dawn, the Titan Rebellion, and the Europa Liberation. I have information vital to the survival of human colonies throughout Council space. Morrison immediately summoned Chen and Torres to her secure office. The three of them read the message together, each processing the impossibility of what they were seeing. According to Council records, No humans operated in the Outer Rim territories. It was forbidden, dangerous, and supposedly impossible given humanity's limited technology and peaceful nature. Elena Vasquez, Torres muttered, accessing his military database. Holy hell, I know that name. She was Special Operations, Deep Reconnaissance. Disappeared during the Titan conflict 15 years ago, presumed killed in action. Apparently not, Chen observed. But how did she get out there? And how has she survived in pirate space for 15 years? The message continued, with coordinates for a meeting point, a desolate asteroid field in the buffer zone between Council-protected space and the Outer Rim territories. The location was technically within human travel restrictions, but far from any Council patrol routes. The meeting was proposed for 72 hours after the message timestamp. This could be a trap, Morrison said, though something about the message's tone convinced her otherwise. Skarn raiders using captured intelligence to lure human officials into ambush range. Or it could be exactly what it appears to be, Torres countered. A human who's been operating independently in the Outer Rim and has information we need. Chen was already running tactical assessments.
If we go, we need a ship capable of defending itself and a crew with combat experience.
The colonial transport vessel won't work. It's designed for safe zone operations. I might have a solution, Torres said slowly. The cargo freighter, New Horizon, has been sitting in our orbital shipyard for 3 months. Captain Williams brought her in for engine repairs, but she's actually a converted military transport from the old Earth Defense Force. Williams is former Navy, and his crew includes several veterans. Morrison made her decision with the grim certainty of someone who had run out of safe options. Contact Captain Williams discreetly. If he's willing to make an unauthorized run to the buffer zone, we'll take the meeting. 48 hours later, Morrison found herself aboard the New Horizon along with Chen, Torres, and a carefully selected team of colonial security personnel. Captain Jack Williams, a grizzled veteran whose weathered face showed the marks of decades in space, briefed them on their modified vessel's capabilities. She looks like a standard cargo hauler, Williams explained, but underneath she's got military-grade shields, enhanced maneuvering thrusters, and enough firepower to discourage casual pirates. Not enough to fight a battlecruiser, but sufficient for survival in hostile territory. The journey to the asteroid field took 18 hours, during which the team reviewed everything they knew about Outer Rim operations. The picture that emerged was troubling. A vast region of space where Council authority meant nothing. Where dozens of aggressive species competed for resources and territory. Where slavery, piracy, and genocide were common business practices. It's not random chaos out there, explained Lieutenant Sarah Kim, their intelligence specialist. The Outer Rim operates under its own rules. Strength determines territory, violence settles disputes, and survival depends on being more dangerous than your enemies. So how does a human survive 15 years in that environment? Chen wondered aloud. They got their answer when the Forgotten Dream emerged from the asteroid field's sensor shadows. Morrison had expected a jury-rigged civilian vessel, perhaps a modified freighter like their own. What she saw instead was a sleek predator, clearly military in design but unlike any human ship she had ever encountered. Unknown vessel, this is Captain Elena Vasquez. Permission to come aboard for face-to-face discussion. Williams handled the docking procedures with professional efficiency, and 20 minutes later, Elena Vasquez stepped through the airlock. Morrison's first impression was of controlled lethality. A woman in her 50s who moved with the fluid precision of a predator, her clothing a mixture of human colonial patterns and alien materials she didn't recognize. Administrator Morrison, Vasquez said, her voice carrying the flat tones of someone accustomed to dangerous conversations. Thank you for taking this risk. What I have to tell you won't be pleasant, but it's information your people need to survive. They gathered in the ship's conference room, and Vasquez began with a holographic display of the Outer Rim territories. Red zones marked areas controlled by various pirate factions, while blue zones showed the few independent colonies that had managed to establish themselves outside Council authority. First thing you need to understand, Vasquez said, is that the Council's protection racket has made humanity famous throughout the galaxy. Every pirate fleet from here to the galactic core knows about the peaceful humans who don't fight back and whose protectors take 45 minutes to respond to attacks. Protection racket? Morrison asked. That's what it is. Vasquez replied bluntly. The Council maintains authority by controlling peaceful species and using them as justification for military expansion. Human colonies are perfect, productive enough to be valuable, peaceful enough to be vulnerable, and sympathetic enough that their destruction generates political support for Council operations. Torres leaned forward. You're saying the Council deliberately uses us as bait? I'm saying the Council benefits from human casualties, Vasquez corrected. Whether they're doing it deliberately or just allowing it to happen naturally is a distinction without a difference. Chen pulled up the raid data they had compiled. We've identified patterns suggesting coordination between raider groups, intelligence sharing, tactical planning, systematic targeting of specific infrastructure. Vasquez nodded grimly. The Skarn Confederacy has been building a coalition of Rim species for the past 2 years. They're planning something big, a coordinated assault on Council-protected territory designed to demonstrate that the Council can't protect anyone. And human colonies are primary targets because we can't defend ourselves, Morrison concluded. That's where you're wrong, Vasquez said, her expression hardening. Human colonies can't defend themselves under current Council restrictions. But humans? Humans can be absolutely terrifying when we need to be. She activated another holographic display, this one showing her own ship specifications. The Forgotten Dream was indeed a predator, fast, heavily armed, and equipped with technology that seemed impossible for human engineering. I've been operating in the Outer Rim for 15 years, Vasquez explained, building alliances with independent species, trading with frontier colonies, and when necessary, fighting off anyone who thought humans were easy prey. This ship has technology from 17 different species, weapon systems the Council has never seen, and a crew that includes beings who respect strength above all else. A crew? Kim asked. 4 humans, 6 aliens from species that chose independence over Council protection. We've been successful because we adapted to Rim conditions, instead of expecting the Rim to accommodate our peaceful preferences. Morrison studied the ship's specifications with growing amazement. The weapon systems alone were beyond anything in the Council's database of human technology. How is this possible? The Council's assessments showed that human technology was centuries behind galactic standards. The Council's assessments were based on what we chose to show them, Vasquez replied with a slight smile. Earth's military kept certain capabilities classified during first contact. We presented ourselves as peaceful explorers because that seemed like the safest path to galactic integration. Torres was reviewing crew records on the display. Some of these humans, I recognize the names, they were listed as missing in action or killed during various conflicts. People who couldn't adapt to post-war civilian life, Vasquez acknowledged. Veterans who felt lost in humanity's new peaceful society. The Outer Rim gives them purpose, and Rim species respect warriors in ways that modern human civilization doesn't. The conversation was interrupted by proximity alarms. Captain Williams's voice came over the intercom. We've got multiple contacts approaching fast. Skarn Fighter Squadron, 12 vessels. Attack formation. Vasquez was moving before the alarm finished sounding. This is why I chose this location. The Skarn have been testing Council response times in the buffer zones. They'll attack any human vessel they encounter, expecting easy prey. Can we outrun them? Morrison asked. We could try, Williams replied over the comm, but they're faster than a cargo hauler. No, Vasquez said firmly. Administrator, you wanted to know if humans can defend themselves in the Outer Rim? You're about to see a demonstration. She activated her ship's communication system. Eleanor to Forgotten Dream, emergency launch and combat protocol authorization. Full weapons release. Understood, Captain. Dream launching in 30 seconds. Morrison watched through the viewport as Vasquez's ship separated from their docking clamps and accelerated toward the approaching Skarn fighters. What happened next shattered every assumption the galaxy had made about human combat capability. The Forgotten Dream moved like a living thing, twisting through space with impossible agility, while its weapon systems engaged targets with precision that bordered on prescient. Skarn fighters that had expected to face defenseless prey suddenly found themselves outgunned, outmaneuvered, and thoroughly outmatched. Holy hell, Chen breathed as they watched 3 Skarn fighters destroyed in the first 30 seconds of combat. What kind of weapon system is that? Hybrid technology, Vasquez replied, monitoring the battle from the New Horizons sensor station. Human tactical software integrated with Chronar energy weapons and Zalani targeting systems. The Rim teaches you to use every advantage you can get. The battle lasted less than 5 minutes. When it ended, 8 Skarn fighters were debris, and the remaining 4 were limping away at best possible speed. The Forgotten Dream had suffered minor shield damage and nothing more. This is why the Skarn are building their coalition, Vasquez said as her ship returned to docking position. They've encountered independent human operations throughout the Rim, and we've consistently handed them defeats they can't explain or counter. Morrison felt her worldview shifting. How many humans are operating in the Outer Rim? Difficult to say exactly, Maybe 2,000 scattered across dozens of systems. Veterans who couldn't adapt to peaceful civilian life. Explorers who wanted to see the galaxy beyond Council restrictions. Traders who recognized opportunities in frontier markets. And they're all like you? Military capabilities integrated with alien technology? Some are. Others are miners, researchers, merchants who've learned to defend themselves. But all of them understand something the Council missed. Humans adapt. We always have. Put us in a peaceful environment, we become peaceful. Put us in a hostile environment, we become the apex predator. Torres was studying tactical readouts from the recent battle. That level of combat effectiveness, it's not just technology. Your crew coordination, targeting priorities, tactical decision-making, that's professional military standard. Better than professional military standard, Vasquez corrected. Rim combat is personal. No support networks, no backup, no second chances. You learn to be perfect, or you die. As they prepared to return to New Geneva, Vasquez made her proposal. Administrator, human colonies in Council space are living on borrowed time. The Scarran Coalition will test Council defenses within the next 6 months. When they do, they'll target human settlements specifically because we're perceived as the weakest link. What are you suggesting? Let me train volunteer defenders from your colonies, not to replace Council protection, but to supplement it. Give your people the tools and knowledge they need to survive the 45 minutes it takes for help to arrive. Morrison felt the weight of decision pressing down on her. Accepting Vasquez's offer would mean acknowledging the Council protection was inadequate, that humanity needed to prepare for war despite their peaceful designation, that the galaxy was more dangerous than they had been allowed to understand. What would this training involve? Combat tactics, defensive planning, weapon systems that Council assessments claim humans can't operate. I can provide technology transfers that will give your colonies the capability to defend themselves against anything short of a full battle fleet. Chen raised the obvious concern. If the Council discovers we're developing military capabilities beyond our designated parameters, we risk losing protected status entirely. And if we don't develop those capabilities, Torres countered, we risk ending up like the Alterans. Morrison made her decision with the grim certainty that there were no safe choices left. How soon can you begin? I have 3 ships and 30 personnel ready to deploy immediately, Vasquez replied. But, Administrator, once we start this process, there's no going back. The galaxy is going to learn that humanity's peaceful nature was a choice, not an inability. And when they learn that, then we find out if the galaxy is ready to deal with humans who choose to fight. The return journey to New Geneva was quiet, each member of the team processing the implications of what they had witnessed and agreed to. Humanity's protected status had been built on incomplete information and mistaken assumptions. The Council had evaluated human peace without understanding human war. Now, with the Outer Rim Coalition gathering strength and Council protection proving inadequate, humanity faced a choice that would define their place in galactic civilization. They could continue to accept protective custody and hope their guardians would prove more effective, or they could reclaim the warrior heritage they had put aside in the name of peace. As New Geneva appeared on their senses, Morrison realized that humanity's trial by fire was about to begin. The galaxy had judged them innocent and found them harmless. Those judgments were about to be tested by forces that viewed innocence as weakness and harmlessness as opportunity. That scattered throughout human space, veterans who had hoped never to fight again were preparing to teach their peaceful neighbors that sometimes the price of peace is the willingness to wage war. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when humanity's lamb revealed the wolf that had always been waiting beneath. Elena Vasquez had brought more than technology and training to human colonies. She had brought the truth, that humanity's greatest strength had never been their peaceful nature, but their ability to choose when and how to abandon it. The transformation began quietly, hidden beneath the peaceful routine of daily life in human colonies throughout Council space. Elena Vasquez kept her promise, arriving at New Geneva 3 weeks after their meeting with a small fleet of vessels that looked like nothing more than ordinary cargo haulers. But appearance, as the galaxy was about to learn, could be devastatingly deceiving. Administrator Morrison watched from the orbital station as Vasquez's ships docked, their crews bringing equipment that would have caused panic among Council oversight teams if they had understood what they were seeing. Weapon components disguised as mining equipment, shield generators labeled as power distribution systems, and tactical communication arrays listed as scientific instruments.
The first lesson of Rim survival, Vasquez explained during her initial briefing to New Geneva's Volunteer Defense Force, is that everything can be a weapon, and weapons can be hidden in everything.
The volunteers numbered nearly 400, drawn from the colony's veteran population and younger colonists who had grown tired of being helpless targets.
Master Sergeant Catherine Walsh had organized them into training groups based on experience levels, from former special operations personnel to civilians who had never held anything more dangerous than a wrench. "We're not building an army," Vasquez emphasized to the assembled group. "We're teaching you to be survivors. The goal isn't conquest or aggression. It's making sure that when the wolves come hunting, they find predators instead of sheep." Dr. Rebecca Hassan had initially opposed the training program, arguing that humanity's peaceful status was worth preserving even at the cost of vulnerability. But her experience treating refugees from the Altarian massacre had changed her perspective. Now she served as the program's chief medical officer, developing combat medic protocols and trauma response procedures. "I still believe in peace," she told Morrison during a planning session. "But I've learned the difference between peace and pacifism. Peace is a choice we make when all parties agree to it. Pacifism is what gets you killed when the other side chooses violence." The training began with basic survival skills, situational awareness, emergency response protocols, and defensive tactics that could be employed by civilian populations under attack. But gradually, as volunteers proved capable and motivated, the instruction evolved into something more sophisticated. Former Lieutenant Colonel David Kim found himself teaching small unit tactics to colonial engineers who approached military problems with the same systematic thinking they applied to infrastructure projects. The results were often unconventional but devastatingly effective. "Civilian thinking combined with military training produces interesting results," Kim observed. "These people don't have preconceived notions about how combat should work, so they're willing to try approaches that career soldiers might dismiss." Chief Petty Officer Robert Santos was working with the colony's technical staff to integrate alien weapon systems with human equipment. The process required careful adaptation. Council monitoring systems were designed to detect standard galactic weapon signatures, but hybrid technology might slip through their scans. "The beautiful thing about human engineering," Santos explained to his technical team, "is that we learned to build everything with multiple purposes. A mining laser becomes a weapon system with software modifications. A cargo hauler becomes a gunboat with the right equipment packages." But the most significant changes were psychological. Colonists who had spent years accepting their vulnerability as the price of peaceful coexistence began to understand that they had never been as helpless as everyone assumed. The transformation was visible in their posture, their confidence, their willingness to voice concerns about council policies that had previously been accepted without question. Captain Chenway documented these changes in his security reports, noting increased self-reliance among the civilian population and growing skepticism about council protection guarantees. What he didn't report was the shadow network of communication that was developing between human colonies throughout council space. New Geneva's example was spreading. Vasquez's training teams had deployed to 17 colonies in the past 2 months, always arriving discreetly, always operating under cover of legitimate activities. The knowledge they brought, tactical thinking, defensive planning, technological integration, was being shared through informal networks that bypassed council oversight. On New Terra, former Marine Corps Captain James Rodriguez organized a colonial emergency response committee that was actually a military planning cell. On Kepler, 442b, civilian engineers developed mining infrastructure that could be converted to defensive positions within hours. On Ross 128b, the agricultural collective installed irrigation systems that were actually communications arrays capable of coordinating multi-colony operations. The pattern repeated across human space, peaceful colonies developing capabilities that their protective overseers neither expected nor understood. Humanity was preparing for war while maintaining the facade of continued pacifism. But preparation alone wouldn't be enough. The galaxy was about to provide an opportunity to test everything they had learned. The Skarn Coalition struck without warning on a Tuesday morning, Galactic Standard Time. 17 human colonies came under simultaneous attack from coordinated raider fleets, each assault carefully planned to maximize casualties and demonstrate the futility of council protection. The raids were meant to terrify other peaceful species into submission, while proving that the council's military guarantees were worthless. The coalition had done their intelligence gathering well. They knew human response protocols, evacuation procedures, and defensive limitations. They understood council patrol schedules and response times. They had planned for everything except one possibility, that humans might fight back. with capabilities that official assessments claimed they didn't possess. New Geneva's attack began at 0647 local time. Sensor stations detected the incoming Skarn battle group while it was still 3 hours out from the colony. Under normal circumstances, this would have triggered evacuation protocols while waiting for Council response forces to arrive. Instead, Administrator Morrison activated the colony's new emergency response plan. All civilian personnel to designated shelters. Colonial Defense Force to active status. All auxiliary units report to action stations. Her voice carried across the colony's communication system with calm authority that belied the magnitude of what was about to happen. Captain Chen Wei coordinated the response from the colony's command center, a facility that officially served as the emergency management headquarters but had been secretly converted into a military operations center. Around him, colonists who had been farmers and engineers and teachers just months before operated sophisticated targeting systems and tactical displays with the efficiency of trained soldiers. Incoming force composition: 1 Skarn heavy cruiser, 4 destroyers, 12 fighters, reported Lieutenant Kim from her sensor station. Estimated time to engagement 43 minutes. Council response time, Morrison asked, 78 minutes to arrival, best case scenario. Chen replied. We're on our own until then. The Skarn fleet entered the system expecting to find defenseless prey. Instead, they encountered something that shouldn't have existed, according to every galactic database. A human colony that was ready to fight. The first surprise came when their sensors detected weapon signatures that didn't match any known human technology. The second came when those weapons opened fire with accuracy that suggested professional military targeting systems. The third came when their supposedly overwhelming tactical advantage evaporated under coordinated defensive fire from positions they hadn't known existed. Multiple contacts bearing 27 Mark V. Called Petty Officer Santos from his fire control station. Scarred fighters moving to attack formation. Defensive screen Alpha, engage at maximum range, Chen ordered. All stations weapons free. The hybrid weapon systems that Elena Vasquez had provided performed exactly as promised. Human tactical software-guided alien energy weapons in patterns that the Skarn couldn't predict or counter. Mining platforms that had been secretly modified revealed themselves as heavily armed defensive installations. Cargo vessels launched from concealed hangar bays, their peaceful appearance masking military-grade combat capabilities. The battle lasted 37 minutes. When Council response forces finally arrived, they found the Skarn attack fleet either destroyed or in full retreat, while New Geneva's defenses remained intact and operational. The aftermath left both the raiders and the rescue force struggling to understand what they had witnessed. Administrator Morrison, came the shocked voice of Council Fleet Captain Shortack. Our sensors indicate extensive combat activity in this system. Please report your status. Morrison replied with carefully neutral tones. New Geneva colony successfully defended against hostile attack. Minimal casualties, infrastructure intact, threat neutralized. How is that possible? Our assessment indicated human colonies lack defensive capabilities. It appears your assessment was incomplete, Captain. We look forward to debriefing Council intelligence personnel at their earliest convenience. But New Geneva wasn't an isolated incident. Across human space, the pattern repeated with variations. Skarn coalition forces that had expected easy victories found themselves engaging opponents who fought with skill, technology, and coordination that contradicted everything they thought they knew about humanity. On New Terra, Captain Rodriguez's Emergency Response Committee revealed itself as a military command structure that had been planning defensive operations for months. Modified agricultural equipment emerged from concealment as mobile artillery platforms. Civilian volunteers demonstrated marksmanship skills that suggested extensive training despite their peaceful designation. Kepler 442B's mining infrastructure proved to be an integrated defensive network that channeled attacking forces into prepared kill zones. The colony's engineers had spent weeks studying Skarn tactical doctrine, developing countermeasures that turned the raiders' own aggressive nature against them. Ross 128B's agricultural collective coordinated a multi-colony response that saw defensive forces from 3 human settlements converging on the attack side in precisely timed maneuvers. The raiders found themselves outnumbered, outgunned, and facing tactical coordination that belonged on a military battlefield rather than a farming community. By the end of what historians would later call the Day of 17 Battles, Skarn coalition forces had suffered devastating losses across human space. More importantly, they had failed completely in their objective of demonstrating human vulnerability and Council protection inadequacy. Instead, they had revealed something that would reshape galactic civilization's understanding of humanity. The wolves had been hiding among the sheep all along. News of the coordinated defense spread through galactic communication networks faster than official council reports could be compiled. Species throughout the galaxy who had accepted humanity's peaceful designation began to reconsider their assumptions.
The Skarn Coalition's failure sent shockwaves through the Outer Rim territories, where aggressive species suddenly found themselves wondering what other peaceful civilizations might be hiding similar capabilities.
But the most significant impact was on the Galactic Council itself.
For the first time in their recorded history, a protected species had demonstrated military capabilities that exceeded their official assessments. Humans had revealed technology, training, and coordination that suggested systematic preparation for warfare, despite their designated peaceful status. Emergency council sessions convened to address what many members viewed as a fundamental betrayal of trust. How had humanity developed such capabilities while under protective oversight? Why had their assessments failed so completely? And most importantly, what else might they have missed about the species they thought they understood? Elena Vasquez received Morrison's after-action report while her own fleet engaged Skarn remnants in the Outer Rim territories. Reading about humanity's coordinated defensive success, she allowed herself a rare smile. The galaxy had tested humanity and found them anything but innocent. Message to all Rim operations, she transmitted to her scattered network of independent human vessels. The masquerade is over. Humanity just announced to the galaxy that we're not the helpless pacifists everyone assumed. The response would come soon enough. Some species would recalculate their threat assessments and approach humanity with new caution. Others would view the revelation as a challenge that required response. The Council would demand explanations and possibly reconsider humanity's protected status. Row. But for the first time since joining galactic civilization, humanity would face these challenges from a position of demonstrated strength rather than assumed weakness. They had chosen to be peaceful, but they had never chosen to be helpless. The galaxy's judgment of human innocence had been based on incomplete information. Now that the complete picture was emerging, everyone would have to reconsider what it meant when humanity decided that peace was no longer possible. In 17 human colonies throughout Council space, citizens who had been ordinary farmers and teachers and engineers just hours before cleaned their weapons and maintained their newly revealed defensive positions. They had tasted combat and found themselves capable of survival in a dangerous galaxy. The transformation was complete. Humanity had awakened from their protected sleep to discover they had always been warriors. The only question now was what the galaxy intended to do about it. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 3 days after what the galaxy was already calling humanity's revelation. The great crystalline chamber buzzed with tension as representatives from hundreds of species gathered to address a crisis that challenged the fundamental assumptions underlying galactic civilization. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in the same spot where she had received humanity's protected status just months earlier. But everything had changed. The modest delegation of 3 humans was now flanked by security escorts, and the chamber's atmosphere crackled with suspicion, fear, and barely contained anger from species who felt they had been deceived. Councillor Vexthara's compound eyes reflected the data streams flowing across holographic displays showing the aftermath of the 17 battles. Destroyed Skarn vessels, human defensive installations that shouldn't have existed, and weapon signatures that contradicted every official assessment of human technological capabilities. Ambassador Chen, Vexthara's voice carried formal disapproval. The Council requires an explanation for the events of the past 72 hours. How did humanity develop military capabilities that directly contradict their designated peaceful status? Sarah had prepared for this moment, knowing that humanity's response would determine their future relationship with galactic civilization.
The choice was between continued deception or complete honesty about what they truly were.
Councillor Vexthara, esteemed members of the Council, Sarah began, her voice carrying across the chamber with quiet confidence. Humanity never claimed to be incapable of self-defense. We claim to prefer peaceful solutions to violent ones. Your assessments confuse choice with inability. General Throme of the Craxi delegation rose from his massive seat, his bulk radiating menace. Ambassador, your species was evaluated extensively. Our intelligence services found no evidence of advanced military technology, tactical training, or warrior culture. Either our assessments were criminally incompetent or humanity systematically deceived the Council. Dr. Marcus Webb, now serving as humanity's military liaison, stepped forward. General, your assessments were based on what we chose to reveal during first contact. Earth's leadership made a strategic decision to present ourselves as peaceful explorers rather than a potentially threatening military power. We believed this approach would facilitate better relations with galactic civilization. Deception! spat Councillor Morthak from the hegemony delegation. Systematic, calculated deception designed to gain protected status under false pretenses. Captain Elena Rodriguez, promoted to represent humanity's military interests, replied with steel in her voice. Councillor, every species in this chamber maintains classified military capabilities. The only difference is that humanity's peaceful presentation was genuine preference rather than propaganda. We chose peace because we understood war. The chamber erupted in multiple conversations as species debated among themselves. The implications were staggering. If humanity had been hiding such capabilities, what other peaceful species might be doing the same? The entire Council protection system was built on accurate threat assessments and species classifications. Councillor Zephyrus's energy patterns pulsed rapidly as he accessed classified databases. The records showed that Earth's initial technology demonstrations focused exclusively on peaceful applications. Medical advances, environmental restoration, exploration vessels. No weapons technology was presented. Because we didn't want to be classified as a threat, Sarah replied honestly. Our historical studies of galactic civilization showed that militaristic species faced constant scrutiny, territorial restrictions, and potential conflict with Council authority. We chose to emphasize our peaceful achievements, while secretly maintaining military capabilities that could challenge Council forces, General Throme observed with growing anger. While maintaining the ability to defend ourselves when peaceful options failed, Rodriguez corrected. As recent events demonstrated, Council protection has significant limitations. The accusation hit like a physical blow. The Council's protection guarantee was the foundation of their authority over peaceful species. Suggesting that protection was inadequate challenged the entire system of galactic governance. Councillor Meldorian's bioluminescent patterns shifted to aggressive configurations. The Skarn coalition attacked 17 human colonies simultaneously. Our response forces arrived within standard timeframes and found the threat already neutralized. How do you explain human defensive capabilities that exceed our own tactical projections? Dr. Webb activated a holographic display showing human technological development over the past century. Councillors, humanity's approach to technology has always been adaptive and integrative. We don't just develop new systems, we combine existing technologies in unexpected ways. The display showed human colonies where mining equipment had been modified for defensive use, where agricultural systems served double duty as communication networks, where civilian infrastructure could be rapidly converted to military applications.
This is the result of what we call dual-use engineering, Webb explained.
Every system we build serves multiple purposes, including defensive ones if necessary. A mining laser can cut through rock or disable a spacecraft. A cargo vessel can haul freight or deploy defensive platforms. A communication array can coordinate farming operations or military maneuvers. Ingenious, admitted Councillor Ithara from the Synthesis Collective, but it suggests systematic preparation for warfare rather than genuine peaceful intent. Sarah felt the weight of the moment. Humanity's future in galactic civilization hung on how they explained their nature to species who viewed strength and peace as mutually exclusive. Esteemed councillors, she said, I want to share something about human history that your assessments may have missed. We didn't evolve as a peaceful species that somehow developed military capability. We evolved as a warrior species that learned to choose peace. The chamber fell silent as the implications settled. Sarah continued, knowing she was revealing humanity's deepest truth to beings who might not understand it. For thousands of years, humans fought constant wars. We developed weapons that could destroy entire continents, tactics that could annihilate civilizations, and military doctrines that treated conflict as inevitable. We became very, very good at killing. Then why did your assessment show peaceful behavior? Vexthara asked. Because we learned something that apparently few species discover, that strength and restraint are not opposites, that the most dangerous beings are often the most peaceful. That choosing not to fight when you're capable of devastating violence is the highest form of civilization. Rodriguez stepped forward. The humans who fought in the 17 battles weren't peaceful farmers who suddenly learned to use weapons. They were experienced warriors who had chosen to be peaceful farmers until circumstances required them to remember their true nature. The revelation rippled through the chamber as species began to understand the magnitude of what they were hearing. Humanity hadn't been hiding weapons or technology. They had been hiding themselves. How many of your colonists have military experience? General Throme demanded. Approximately 40% of human adults have some form of combat training, Rodriguez replied. But more importantly, human culture maintains detailed historical records of warfare, tactics, and military technology. Every human child learns about past conflicts as part of their education. Educational information? Counselor Morthak asked. Strategic knowledge, Sarah corrected. We teach our children about war so they understand both its costs and its methods. Peace maintained through ignorance is fragile. Peace maintained through strength and choice is enduring. Dr. Webb activated another display showing human cultural development. Our literature, entertainment, and historical studies all contain detailed information about warfare. A human farmer may have spent 20 years growing crops, but he's also spent a lifetime learning about tactics, weapons, and combat through cultural transmission. The chamber buzzed with translated conversations as species struggled to process this information. The concept of a warrior culture that chose to be peaceful was alien to most galactic civilizations. They understood strength that led to aggression and weakness that required protection, but not strength that chose restraint. Elena Vasquez's voice suddenly echoed through the chamber as she materialized via holographic transmission from the Outer Rim territories. Counselors, I represent the humans who never chose peaceful civilian life after our species achieved global unity. I can provide additional perspective on human capabilities. The appearance of a human operating independently in lawless space sent shockwaves through the assembly. According to their records, no humans had the technology or skills to survive in the Outer Rim.
Captain Vasquez, Vexthara said carefully, Council records indicate no authorized human presence in Outer Rim territories.
Because I never sought authorization, Vasquez replied bluntly. 15 years ago, I took my military expertise to a region of space where it could be useful.
I've built alliances with independent species, established trading relationships with frontier colonies, and when necessary, fought off pirates who thought humans were easy targets. How many humans operate in the Outer Rim? General Throm demanded. Enough, Vasquez said with a slight smile. Enough to have earned respect from species that only understand strength. Enough to have established humanity's reputation as worthy allies or dangerous enemies. Enough to have proven that human peaceful nature was always a choice, not a limitation. The implications were staggering. While the Council had been protecting humanity as a helpless species, humans had been operating throughout the galaxy as independent actors, building relationships and demonstrating capabilities that contradicted every official assessment. Councillor Zephyro's energy patterns shifted to what appeared to be deep thought. This changes everything. If humanity's peaceful behavior was performance rather than nature, then our protection protocols have been based on false assumptions. Not false, Sarah corrected. Incomplete. You evaluated our current behavior without understanding the foundation that made it possible. We are peaceful because we choose to be, not because we must be. And when that choice is no longer viable, Vexthara asked, then we become what we've always been capable of being, Rodriguez answered. The species that survived ice ages conquered a planet, reached for the stars, and learnt to turn swords into plowshares while remembering how to forge them again when needed. The debate continued for hours, as the Council struggled with the fundamental challenge to their worldview. How did they categorize a species that was simultaneously peaceful and militaristic, cooperative and independent, protective and dangerous? Finally, Councillor Yathara posed the critical question. Ambassador Chen, what does humanity want from this Council? What status do you seek now that your true nature has been revealed? Sarah looked around the chamber, seeing fear in some faces, anger in others, but also something that hadn't been there before, respect. For the first time since humanity had joined galactic civilization, they were being treated as equals rather than children requiring protection. We want to be judged for what we actually are, she said. Not as helpless pacifists who need protection, not as aggressive warriors who require containment, but as a species capable of both peace and war, who consistently chooses peace when possible and war only when necessary.
And if the Council cannot accept this dichotomy? General Throm asked.
Then humanity will chart its own course through the galaxy, Vasquez interjected from her remote transmission. We never needed the Council's protection as much as they convinced us we did. The Outer Rim has taught us that humans can thrive anywhere we choose to go. The threat was implicit but clear. Humanity was no longer dependent on Council protection or approval. They had revealed their capability to survive and prosper independently, whether in protected space or lawless territories. After extensive deliberation, the Council reached their decision. Councillor Vexthara announced the verdict with formal gravity. The Galactic Council hereby reclassifies humanity from Category 5 protected status to Category 2 independent status. Humans will maintain full membership rights and responsibilities while being recognized as capable of self-defense and independent operation throughout galactic territories. The decision represented a fundamental shift. Humanity was no longer protected children but recognized as mature participants in galactic civilization. They gained access to previously restricted territories, advanced technology transfers, and military cooperation agreements. But they also accepted responsibility for their own security and accountability for their actions. Furthermore, Vexthara continued, the Council formally acknowledges that previous assessments of human capabilities were incomplete. Future species evaluations will include deeper analysis of cultural capacity for violence alongside observed peaceful behavior. General Thrum rose to make a formal statement. The Craxi delegation wishes to propose immediate military cooperation agreements with humanity. Species capable of such tactical innovation and adaptive thinking would be valuable allies in maintaining galactic stability. Similar offers came from a dozen other species. The revelation of humanity's true nature had transformed them from objects of protection into potential partners for alliance and cooperation. But not all reactions were positive. Several species expressed concern about humanity's deception and questioned whether other peaceful civilizations might be hiding similar capabilities. The foundation of trust that underlay Council authority had been shaken. As the session concluded, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. Humanity had entered galactic civilization as innocent children seeking protection and guidance. They were leaving as recognized adults capable of standing as equals among the stars. The galaxy had judged humanity innocent and found them harmless. Both judgments had been based on incomplete information. Now, with the full truth revealed, humanity would face the galaxy as they truly were, a species that had learned to balance the capacity for devastating violence with the wisdom to choose restraint. In human colonies throughout Council space, veterans who had awakened from peaceful retirement continued their preparations. They had tasted combat again and remembered who they used to be. Some would return to farming and teaching and engineering, but they would never again be helpless victims waiting for protection that might not come. Elena Vasquez concluded her transmission with words that would echo through human space. The masquerade is over. Humanity has shown the galaxy our true face. Now we'll discover if they're wise enough to treat us as allies rather than enemies. The galaxy's judgment of humanity was complete. They had been found neither innocent nor guilty, neither helpless nor aggressive. They had been found to be exactly what they claimed to be, a species capable of both war and peace, who consistently chose the harder path of restrained strength over easy violence. Time would tell if the galaxy was mature enough to handle that truth, or if humanity would need to teach additional lessons about the consequences of mistaking choice for weakness. But one thing was certain. The wolves had revealed themselves among the sheep, and galactic civilization would never look at humanity the same way again. In the end, humanity's greatest strength had always been their ability to adapt to any environment, whether it demanded peace or war. They had spent centuries learning to be peaceful. Now, if necessary, they could spend the next centuries remembering how to be wolves. The galaxy had judged them. Now humanity would judge the galaxy in return.